You know, that weird feeling that you're speeding up the pace every day? But the finish line never shows up, and the tranquility always seems to be in the next pay raise. It's funny, because while we get lost in this rush here in the United States, Europeans seem to be watching us from afar. Like those who have seen this movie and know that the ending is not quite what they promised. Today, I don't want to talk about numbers or politics, but about that secret that Europe has already learned about, our future, and that we, in the rush to make it happen, simply stopped noticing. If you live or follow daily life in the United States, you may have noticed that the clock here seems to turn in a different way. There's an invisible pressure, a kind of constant ringing in your ears that says, if you're not producing, you're falling behind. It is the culture of the hustle, of effort taken to the extreme. But what we rarely stop to think about is, where exactly are we running in such a hurry? In Europe, the relationship with time is not about laziness, as many Americans like to label it, but about a deep understanding that life cannot be just a break between two work shifts. When you walk down a street in Madrid, Paris, or even in smaller cities in Germany, you notice something that has almost been extinguished here: the right to a break, the coffee taken without haste, the shops that close for lunch, the guaranteed vacation weeks that are not seen as a luxury but as a biological and mental necessities. Europeans have already understood something that the future of the US is now beginning to demand: the collapse of fatigue. Here, we transformed occupation into status. If you ask someone how they're doing, and the answer is, "I'm too busy," that sounds like a trophy of success. But deep down, all this speed is an illusion. We run to earn more, to be able to buy things that help us relax from the stress we had to earn money. It's an endless cycle that drains our sense of security. The big difference that Europeans have already learned is that the quality of life is inversely proportional to the constant urgency. They prioritize predictability. They know that if they get sick or decide to stop for a month, their lives won't fall apart. This creates a peace of mind that American money, no matter how bulky, often can't buy. Here, the feeling is that we are on a conveyor belt that only increases speed. If you trip, the system runs you over. We are ignoring the fact that human beings were not made to live in a state of alert 24 hours a day. This relentless pursuit of maximum efficiency has turned our cities into corridors of passage and our homes into dormitories. We no longer inhabit the places, we just move through them between one appointment and another. Meanwhile, the European model preserves what they call dolce far niente, or the art of doing nothing. They know that the future does not belong to those who run the fastest, but to those who manage to keep their sanity while walking. This is the first great lesson that we are neglecting. The dream has become a marathon without a finish line, and the security we seek so much will not come from a fatter bank account if we don't have time to simply exist without the guilt of not producing. Europe has already seen that progress, that sacrifices rest is, in fact, a human setback. And we, here, are still trying to understand why. Even with so much access and technology, we have never felt so exhausted and emotionally unprotected. This is where it gets deeper. In the United States, we grow up hearing that being self-sufficient is the greatest virtue of a human being. Do it yourself. Don't depend on anyone. Be the captain of your destiny. It's a powerful narrative, and I confess that it's even inspiring, but it hides a weight that we only feel when our body or bank account asks for help. In Europe, the thinking is different. They do not look at the government or the community as a crutch, but as collective insurance. If a European loses his job or gets sick, he feels sadness, of course, but he doesn't feel that existential terror of ending up on the street. Here, we live under a regime of constant alert. We know that if the gear locks, the fall is straight to the ground, without a safety net. And that's the invisible cost I'm talking about. The psychological price of having to be your own army, your own hospital, and your own social security. This pressure creates a sense of isolation that we try to fill with consumption, but the emptiness is still there. It's as if we were always walking on a tightrope. And you know what's crazier? We got used to it. We think it's normal to work sick or be afraid to call an ambulance because of the bill. Europeans look at this and cannot understand how the world's largest economy has accepted that peace of mind is a luxury item. I know that what I'm talking about here moves a lot of people because it's our naked reality. And if this subject is hitting there in a different way, If you also feel this weight of having to handle everything alone, do yourself a favor. Leave your like down here. It's a simple gesture, but it helps this conversation to reach more people who are on the same treadmill as us. And if the like is not enough, leave a comment. Let's talk about how you deal with this pressure. What Europe has already understood, and that we insist on ignoring, is that no one was made to be an island. The future we are building in the US is incredibly efficient at generating wealth, but it is failing miserably at generating emotional security. We have bigger houses, faster cars, but we sleep less peacefully than a resident of a simple village in the interior of Italy. The question that remains is, how long will we sustain this pride of being self-sufficient, while the cost of this is our own well-being? Have you noticed how, in the United States, our lives take place almost entirely inside boxers? We leave the box that is our home, enter the box that is the car, and go to the box that is the office or the supermarket. There is a geographical isolation that we accepted as progress, but that, deep down, destroyed something sacred: spontaneous conviviality. In Europe, life happens between buildings. It's the squares, the wide sidewalks, the cafes where you sit, and, even if you're alone, you feel part of something bigger. Here, we privatized leisure and security. If you want to see people, you go to the mall or a paid club. If you want security, you build a wall or put a camera. But what Europeans have learned for centuries is that real security doesn't come from bars, it comes from familiar faces. When you walk through your neighborhood and meet the owner of the bakery or the neighbor on the bench in the square, the fear decreases. The other ceases to be a potential threat and becomes an extension of your community. In the US, the design of our cities has pushed us into isolation. We don't walk, we transit. And in this lonely traffic, distrust grows. The silent collapse I mentioned at the beginning is exactly this: the end of the public square as a meeting place. When we lose common space, we lose empathy. We began to look to the side and see strangers, not neighbors. And living surrounded by strangers is inherently anxious. While Europe preserves the right to belong to the public space, we here are increasingly confined to our private bubble. We spend fortunes to create an oasis in our backyard because the street looks like a hostel place or just a corridor for cars. We are ignoring the fact that human beings need the collective to feel safe. The freedom of having an amazing car is no substitute for the freedom of being able to walk aimlessly and feel at home in one's own city. This urban disconnection is what feeds the feeling that something has changed, that our routine has become colder and our future more lonely. Now, tell me something. From which country do you watch me? Right here in the comments. We have reached the point that is perhaps the most difficult to face, but it is the most liberating. There's a question that hangs over the dinner table of almost every American family today. Was it worth it? We spent decades believing that security was a destination that we would reach after accumulating assets, positions, and status. But the great insight that Europeans have already had, and that we are beginning to discover now, often due to fatigue, is that true wealth is not measured by what you have in the garage, but by the mastery you have over your own hours. You know that Sunday night feeling, that twinge of anxiety that is already starting to steal your rest? This is the symptom that we have exchanged our wealth of time for a wealth of things. In Europe, life is organized around living. Here, it is organized around doing. And what the future is showing us is that this model of infinite production has reached a psychological ceiling. The average American is exhausted. It is not a physical exhaustion that is resolved with a night's sleep. It is an exhaustion of the soul, of those who feel that they are always owing something to the system. The fundamental difference that Europeans protect tooth and nail is the right not to be productive all the time. They understand that real safety is having time to watch their children grow up, time to cook a meal, time to simply be. We, on the other hand, have been taught that time is money, and by transforming every minute into dollars, we ended up devaluing the minutes that are priceless. The silent breakdown happens when you realize that despite having everything you were told you needed to have, you still don't feel at peace. The awakening to this new wealth is what Europeans already practice, the search for stability instead of the search for speed. They are not trying to conquer the world. They are trying to conquer Tuesday afternoon itself. And perhaps this is the biggest culture shock we are about to experience. To start questioning whether the security we seek so much is not precisely in what we gave up, the simplicity of a predictable life, without the constant fear of being discarded by the next innovation or the next crisis. What I want you to understand today is that there's nothing wrong with wanting the best for your family, but there's something very wrong with a system that makes you feel like you're never enough. The future that Europe already knows is a future where success is defined by how much of your life really belongs to you. And maybe, just maybe, we are ready to stop ignoring this and start reclaiming our peace, 1 minute at a time. This journey of rediscovery is not about abandoning the American dream, but about waking up from it to something much more real and human. It's about understanding that, at the end of the day, the greatest security you can have is the freedom to take a deep breath and know that you're there. We spend our whole lives chasing after a security that, deep down, only arrives when we finally regain the right to breathe without haste. At the end of the day, what Europeans have already realized is that the greatest luxury of all is not to have a lot, it is to have peace.